Welcome to The Explainer. Imagine this. You are the CEO of a $40 billion company. You've got 100,000 employees looking to you for answers. It's the year 2000, and honestly, things are a mess. Your company is facing a massive, literal existential crisis. Well, that is exactly the nightmare A.G. Lafley woke up to when he took the helm at Procter Gamble. So, today, we're unpacking the absolute goldmine of insights from the book Playing to Win, How Strategy Really Works, to see exactly how he engineered one of the most incredible corporate turnarounds in history. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap. We're going to start with why strategy is all about choice, walk through the 5-step choice cascade, look at the brilliant Olay reinvention, identify 6 strategy traps you definitely want to avoid, and finally, decode the strategic mindset.
Section 1. Strategy is about choice. The $40 billion P&G crisis.
13 out of 14. Let that sink in for a second. That is the number of quarters P&G had missed their earnings expectations right before Lafley took over. I mean, their stock had just cratered, losing more than half its value. Morale was completely in the tank. Now, the gut instinct here for most leaders, it's to slash budgets across the board or just demand that everyone work harder. But Lafley discovered a totally different truth. The solution wasn't bigger budgets or more frantic busy work. It was, quite simply, better strategy. So the crucial point is that strategy is not a fluffy vision board. It's not some generic mission statement framed on a wall. As the authors define it, strategy is a cascade of tightly integrated choices that uniquely positions a player in its market to create sustainable advantage and superior value relative to the competition. In plain English, it is the deliberate and honestly often really uncomfortable act of deciding exactly what you are going to do and, just as importantly, what you are absolutely not going to do.
Section 2. The Strategic Choice Cascade. The 5-step framework.
Let's move to the framework and see how this all builds together. This is the Strategic Choice Cascade, and it boils down to 5 sequential questions. Number 1, what is our winning aspiration? Number 2, where will we play? 3, how will we win? 4, what capabilities must be in place? And 5, what management systems are required? It's called a cascade because every single answer constrains and enables the very next one. It flows downward, exactly like a waterfall. You literally can't figure out your capabilities until you know exactly where you're playing and how you plan to win there. Makes sense, right? Section 3. The Olay reinvention. From crisis to $2.5 billion. Let's look at how this works in the real world. Back in the late 90s, Olay was in deep, deep trouble. Annual sales had plummeted below $800 million, and their reputation in the market? Oh man, it was actually known as oil of old lady. Yeah, it was seen as completely outdated and disconnected. So P&G was standing at a major crossroads. Do they just launch a brand new brand? Do they buy out an existing competitor? Or do they try to reinvent this dying, iconic brand?
Well, they bravely chose to reinvent.
At just $3.99, this was the original mass market price tag of that famous pink cream. It was cheap, it was packaged in these unremarkable little plastic bottles, and consumers naturally perceived it as, well, low value. P&G realized pretty quickly that if they wanted to achieve a massive new winning aspiration, they couldn't just tweak around the edges. They had to completely change the game. And this brilliantly illustrates what happened next. To change the game, Olay made a dramatic new how-to-win choice. In 1999, they launched Total Effects and completely abandoned that $3.99 price point. The new Olay was $18.99. I mean, think about that. That is a massive strategic leap. It was premium enough to clearly signal high quality, but still accessible enough to be sold right there in your local mass retail stores. What they did was essentially invent a completely new positioning segment. They called it Mistige, this brilliant middle ground carving out a niche between mass retail accessibility and prestige quality. And for their where-to-play choice, they got incredibly specific. They targeted women aged 35 and older who were just noticing their very first wrinkles and were willing to splurge a little bit for actual quality. By narrowing their focus and elevating the product, they achieved their winning aspiration, skyrocketing Olay into a $2.5 billion powerhouse brand. Section 4. The 6 strategy traps. What to avoid. Here's the harsh reality. Most companies are actually operating in a world of false strategy. They mistake inspirational vision statements or heavily detailed operational budgets or just benchmarking their competitors for actual strategy. But real strategy, that's about deliberate choice and defensible differentiation. Because look, copying your competitors' best practices is never going to give you a competitive advantage. It just means you're playing an endless game of operational catch-up. Now, what's really interesting here are the specific traps that drag companies into that false strategy. People mistake strategy for just having a grand vision, building out rigid plans, chasing stretch goals, copying best practices, or just drowning in bureaucracy. But out of all these pitfalls, the absolute deadliest is the failure to choose. It's like trying to juggle everything at once, grasping at every single opportunity that comes your way, but attempting to serve everyone everywhere literally means you end up underserving everyone. True focus requires the guts to explicitly say no.
Section 5. The strategic mindset, the ultimate test. You know, there are distinct cognitive mindsets floating around in every boardroom. The real hero we want to be is the strategic chooser. That's the decisive integrator who's totally comfortable making the hard trade-offs. Now contrast that with the risk-averse manager, the person who avoids conflict and dilutes resources because they refuse to say no to anyone. Or there's the visionary, who's great at inspiring people but is just far too vague. And then you have the planner, who creates this false sense of security by obsessing over budget spreadsheets instead of actual competitive advantage.
So how do you force yourself into the mindset of the strategic chooser? Well, the authors introduced this incredibly powerful master diagnostic tool, and it comes down to one simple question: what would have to be true? You see, whenever you make a strategic choice, you're making a ton of assumptions about the world. This question, it slows you down. It forces you to pull those hidden, risky assumptions right out of the dark and put them squarely on the table for everyone to look at.
Let's actually apply that master question directly to Olay. For their whole Mastige strategy to work, what would have to be true? Well, women 35 and older would actually have to be willing to fork over $18.99 for a drugstore product. Mass retail channels would have to actually support a premium positioning. The cream itself would legitimately need to deliver on combating multiple signs of aging, and, crucial point here, competitors couldn't be able to just copy them overnight. By actively surfacing these assumptions, P&G could proactively test them, which mitigated their risk and built absolute confidence in their strategy.
Look, the pursuit of winning, it's endless. There is no final destination, because the competitive landscape is always shifting right under your feet. Strategy doesn't magically guarantee success, but as Lafley and Martin proved, it dramatically increases your odds. So it's time to stop relying on vague visions and operational busywork. Stop trying to be everything to everyone. The real question is, what hard choices do you need to make today?